Phillips was the lead person by then. The library kind of taken things over because they found some grant money to put people to work in the community working on early literacy. And United Way did something really unique. They hired a facilitator from Charlotte who came in here and worked with us so we could all figure out, well, what do you do that's going to have a lasting impact? And we ended up leasing land in Dudley and putting a modular building on the land that could house up to 30 families of 0 to 3 children, a family learning center. And once we had done the capital part of that, Wages could come in and put an early Head Start program there. It was a beautiful partnership that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't, or not me, it wasn't even my idea, and I wouldn't have thought of that if Steve Parr, the current United Way before Sherry Archibald, hadn't had that idea. And I thought it was just brilliant. And so today, that learning center is operational, and Brogdon Primary School is right down the road, and they have pretty lousy elementary school reading outcomes. So it's a perfect match where we know that the main reason these kids aren't reading when they finish 3rd grade is nobody's talking to them birth to 3. It's not on purpose. We just all obsessed with our phones and tablets and televisions, and somehow we got that message that the old-fashioned way of face-to-face talking, which can be done in an early Head Start setting, a daycare setting, that kind of thing. And so that's just an example of something that happened along the way. So what I'm hoping is, I understand there is some money. I don't understand all the politics of the federal money coming to the city and all that could go into homelessness projects. And I would just hope that we could invest in a facility where we can have a home. So all of us, Goldsboro Pediatrics, the dentists, the social workers, the rehab people. I've actually sort of adopted a homeless man, and he died a few years back, but I learned a whole lot about homelessness trying to help this gentleman for 30 years. And I think we need a place where we can all come in and do the good work we always do for the common good, and stop putting Band-Aids on the problem. So I would hope that that's the way we'd go. But I'd be happy to answer questions because I about said what I had to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Any questions from the council members? Is there any lasting statement that you want to leave us as we go forward in considering how we disperse these funds that we are charged to do?
Again, our model was to have a small group of people who know a whole lot about the problem. So I would pull together the people that have worked the hardest directly on homelessness. I wouldn't say you need the pediatricians or the dentists or the food insecurity people or the transportation people or the mental health people or the addiction people. You need the people who know how to operate a facility that would work, and then decide how we're going to find the money to do that. And then you're going to have a current expense budget to keep it all going. And I think there's support within this community. I've been to some meetings about this sort of thing, but I think you need a core group of advisors who are experts, if you will. I'm not one, on this particular issue. And then that way they can give you the kind of advice you need. And then if you decide to invest in a particular agency or organization, they can be your ongoing supervisor. We do this, I'm on the board of United Way, and we do this with agencies that we fund. We visit those agencies and make sure they're doing what we expect them to do with our money going forward. So that's what I would do, but I keep it small.
So, yeah. Any other opportunities for people to ask questions?
I'd have a question. So what you're actually suggesting to the council is that we support 4-day movement, and that with the monies we find someone to facilitate and to help us. So that's what you're asking.
I think that's fair. I think 4-Day Movement is the only group that I have identified in town that would be capable of doing this. So if that's true, then you would need someone to be the go-between as some small group so that you're not, I mean, this would be like me starting a homelessness project at Goldsboro Pediatrics. I'd have to hire somebody who really understands it. And that way you're getting the kind of advice you need so that the federal government, if that's who is giving you the money, can stay happy. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one other question. With a group such as that, whether it be a commission or some kind of agency that was created, could they not also write follow-on grants to continue the operating expenses?
I would hope that if Goldsboro, our community, showed that level of local support for a facility, a home for the homeless, etc., then it makes it a lot easier to go out and get those grants. In other words, we started a child abuse prevention home visitation program back in the 90s, and it was wonderful that we had money from United Way that we could say that's local money, and then that makes us look good to whomever. In this case, it was going to be the state government with some federal dollars. But with our WISH program, we've done the same thing. The county commissioners and you guys and Mount Olive, everybody gives to the WISH program, and then we go to Kate B. Reynolds, we go to the Duke Endowment, we go to Robert Wood Johnson, we go to the state of North Carolina. And lo and behold, we've kept the WISH program going for 25 years and expanded it, whereas I thought it was going to be three years in a cloud of dust, if you want to know the honest truth. So it's totally exceeded all my expectations, but it has required that nucleus of local money so we could draw down all sorts of outside money. Yeah.
Any other questions? Dr. Taylor, thank you for coming in tonight, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda under old business is boards and commissions appointments, and I'm going to defer to the clerk for this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have 3 boards and commissions applications in your folders. The first application is from Octavius Murphy for the vacant GWTA position. There are also 2 applications in your folders, one that is requesting a position on the Recreation Advisory Commission, and one that her first request is for the Mayor's Committee for Persons with Disabilities, which has no vacancies, and her second choice is the RAC, Recreation Advisory Commission. If you approve of these 3 applications, I'll bring a resolution for appointment to the next meeting. We have a vacant student position also on the RAC. There is no ordinance, as discussed in a couple of meetings ago, there is no ordinance amendment needed to change the terms on the board from a yearly position to a school term. That change can be made by our office with a resolution of appointment when we have someone to appoint. Also, I'd like to ask council to consider moving Thomas Lockamy into the full member position on the Historic District Commission. Right now, he's an alternate on that board. This appointment will leave 2 alternate positions vacant on the Historic District Commission. If council approves, I'll add this position to the resolution as well at the next meeting.
You heard from the clerk concerning the vacancies on the Parks and Recreation as well as the Historic Commission, and the proposal to move Thomas Lockamy to a permanent position on the Historic Commission. Is there any discussion?
Mayor, I move we approve the appointments as recommended by the clerk.
And a motion's been made to accept the applications as submitted to us and spoken to by the clerk. We're not voting on this tonight. All we need really is just an agreement. It would come back to us on the 23rd as a resolution to adopt to appoint these. So it's really, do we have any reason not to accept these individuals?
Well, I don't have any reason not to accept it, but, for the GWTA, we have a young lady that was there. I know that, she's been on there for 6 years, but, I don't see any reason to remove her, or if we could, extend another year. I think this was done for someone named Chris Boyette in the past, and I was just, throwing this out to the council so that we could keep, the meetings going. So, I'm wondering why we can't do that.
Well,
This is just a discussion, you know.
We can do it. There is a precedent has been set, but it'll be up to the council to make a change to that. How does council feel? Anyone?
I don't have a strong opinion. I was excited to see Miss Delbridge and
Yes,
Miss Robinson for Parks and Rec, and being able to fill 2 of those vacancies since they've had a hard time operating and meeting quorum. Those are the only 2 that I had a really strong opinion on.
Ms. Delbridge called me and was got very excited about the opportunity to serve. She lives literally across the street from the park.
Yeah.
So, but getting back to Ms. Jones' comment about extending the current
For a year.
term. Does anyone have any comment on that?
Don't we have Mr. Octavius Murphy application to, isn't that individual's term up?
Yes.
Yes, and
She's
we
very
currently
successful.
have an application in front of us with someone that wants to fill that position. I don't see any need why we need to extend, that individual's term when we have someone here who would like to serve in that capacity. Who also
And,
works.
I agree.
Who also works for the city of Goldsboro, and if I'm not mistaken, this is, the city gets to appoint a staffer person, and the individual, what you should.
It doesn't have to be
Doesn't have to be a staffer, but
citizen or council member.
the individual that we're talking about was appointed as a staffer, so that term has officially ended, and I don't think there's any reason to extend it.
Well, I have nothing against Mr. Murphy at all. Please let me make that clear. All I was saying is that, you know, Mr. Cole has been there, and we wanted to keep the continuity going. I know that Mr. Murphy has his hands full with a lot of things, other things as well. And so I would say it would be good to let her stay on and then move someone else in later. So it is up to the council, but I just wanted to throw that out.
I can't personally speak for Mr. Murphy, but I would like to think that he applied for this position knowing the responsibility that it took and the extra taking up on his plate. So again, I don't see any reason to extend it. That term has officially ended, and we have someone who is willing, able, and capable to jump right in and pick up the torch and keep running.
Is anyone else wants to speak for or against the proposal to extend the current term of the chairperson on the GWTA? If not, I think the council has signified that they would like to move forward with the applicants, and if there are no further objections to that, we'll look forward to a resolution coming back on the 23rd to appoint them. Madam Clerk. Okay. Okay. At this time, we'll go into new business, and the item is board meal development discussion, and we have with us Mr. Gerard Burgess and Mr. Jim Sorry from Adventure One out of Louisville, Kentucky, that is going to speak. So Mr. Gerard Burgess to come forward, please.
We'll pull up the slides for you.
Yes, it's coming.
A clicker there should be able to move them for you.
And for the benefit, just wanted, he's getting the slides up. We're talking about the old board and manufacturing building located out on William Street that is under consideration for redevelopment.
Just a second. We're gonna get for you in a second.
While that's loading, once again, my name's Jared Burgess. Jim Sarah is here with me in the audience tonight. We came in from Louisville, Kentucky. However, our development group, we've done a number of projects all over the Southeast, a number of historic rehabs, and we highlighted some of our past projects in the slides tonight. We've had an opportunity to have just a preliminary discussion with Mayor Ham and a couple of the council members. And we wanted to introduce our concept to the wider group tonight. Once again, this is the old board and mill. Really unique, fantastic old building. This is obviously an old picture. The windows have been bricked up over the years, and this, when it's all said and done, this is similar to what it'll look like with the windows reinstalled, and we're excited to see the final product one day. Let's see here. Just a little bit on our development team. Jim, he's been doing this for a long time. Karin's on our team as well. Jim's got a number of projects he's done in the North Carolina area. Like I said, a number of historic rehabs. Karin has a large portfolio as well. Old mill buildings, old historic warehouses, school buildings, things of that nature that have been converted to multifamily housing. I've been with the team for a few years now and privileged to work with Jim and Karin. Let's see here. The board and mill, it'll create approximately 100 to 110 multifamily living units. The total investment, the slide says 30 million. It'll be north of 40, I would say. And the housing type, it'll be workforce housing, which is different than affordable housing, and we have another slide on that here in a second. The board and mill is on the National Register of Historic Places, and we will work with State SHPO and the National Park Service and work through the Part 2 in order to utilize federal historic tax credits and the North Carolina Mill Revitalization Credit. The board and mill sits just outside of downtown, as you know, and it's in a very prominent location coming in into the city, and we think that a significant investment, like I said, of $40 to $50 million would kickstart the rest of the neighborhood, and you know, there's a number of other historic buildings over there that could one day follow suit. Let's see here. As I mentioned, this board and mill loss will utilize a workforce housing financing structure. This type of housing, there's no income restrictions. The financing stack includes essential function bonds, which will be issued by a local government entity or some sort of city revitalization board. The debt is non-interest, or I'm sorry, it's interest-only debt. And after construction and lease-up, the city will actually own the asset, depending on who the issuer is. And I think in this case, based on the location of the mill, that would be very beneficial to the city to kind of control what happens on that property. We've done a preliminary market study. Once again, this property will not be income restricted, but just to get a general idea, we ran the market study on 120% AMI, and our team, the capture rate on a market study is a key metric, and typically, we look for something below 20%, and usually that's satisfactory. And in this case, you can see they're all well below 5%, which indicates a significant need of this type of housing in the Goldsboro area. Here's an aerial view of what the mill property currently looks like. Here. The next slide will kind of break down the different buildings. So sections A and B will be utilized for the housing units. I'll toggle back here. You can see all the windows are bricked up. Those will obviously all be opened up. Let's see here. The remaining areas of the property will be utilized. They're currently being used as storage space and warehousing, and will likely continue to operate as such. We've got a preliminary look from our architect. This is probably more detailed than what's necessary for this meeting, but it just kind of shows how the units will be laid out. This is the ground level. The majority of units will be 1 and 2 bedroom units. Let's see. Here's the upper level, more 1 and 2 bedroom unit types. And here's just a few projects we've completed. Coleman Mill is actually still in the development phase. That's up the road in Concord, North Carolina. A similar project utilizing historic tax credits and the mill revitalization credit. Here's a historic school building in Macon, Georgia, that was converted to housing. Another school in Cramerton, North Carolina. Let's see here. Here's a high school in Waco, Texas that was revitalized. And another building in Martinsville, Virginia. We have many more examples if anybody would like to see them. I'd like to bring this up. There's a recycling facility directly next to the Board Mill property. We have some concerns with the noise and nothing we can't overcome. We've discussed lining the street, which I believe is Greenleaf Street. It runs in between the Board Mill property and the recycling center. We think that lining both sides of the street with trees would create some sound barrier and insulation between the two properties. We've also researched the situation, and there's been other cities in the past with similar situations. This picture is from a very similar metal processing plant. Cities wanted to come in with new business and homes, and they were kind of deterred from the noise and the commotion going on over there, and they installed some kind of metal encapsulation with a thin layer of soundproofing on the inside. And the results of the study were pretty amazing. They reduced the decibels by 60 or 70%, and everyone was happy in the end. So that's one option that we will be thinking about as we move through the process. Let's see here. This is a preliminary timeline. Our team was discussing earlier. Realistically, we probably need to adjust this back, 4 to 5 months at each step. MPS approval, I think, is still achievable by mid-year, and then we would look to issue bonds late summer, early fall, and then right after that start construction. And typically, a project of this size and historic nature takes 18 to 20 months. And then after that, we rent up and stabilize and go from there. That's my last slide. Any questions or?
So let me say that, as Jerry said, he has, we have had some prior discussion, and there has been no commitment on the part of the city at this point for anything at all, for that matter, to this project. This is an informational concept briefing that they wanted to present, and quite frankly, we wanted you all to hear as well, the council members. There is no request for zoning or special use that has been submitted to the city at this time. It would be, of course, have to be submitted if this project goes forward. So again, as I said, this is something that they are exploring of their own initiative, and I wanted, since there have been discussions or meetings to talk about this, I wanted the council to be brought in on as well. I'd like to open it up to the council to ask Jim, excuse me, Jared, any questions you might have. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not very familiar with the structure of a city being a landlord. Generally that's a housing authority. Have you spoken with either of the housing authorities that service our area?
We have reached out to the housing authority, have not had a conversation. Our lender we frequently work with, he's helped us walk through this initial process, and from our understanding, entity of the city is typically the back end owner of these projects, and like I said, that means cash flow for the city. You can invest in other areas, and after 10, 15, 20 years, sell it and recoup or make a profit.
I think you just added the, I'm sorry.
Coming up.
Jim Sarah, the housing authority could own it, they are a vehicle. The difference with this particular project is it's market driven. It's not an affordable, there's no HUD component, there's no low income tax credits, none of that stuff. So it's not really their cup of tea, in my opinion. That said, I'm not adverse to them owning it, but this, what we wanted to let you guys know is the city can be in charge. This is a big deal in that area. I'm gonna say it's 50 million. And so it's up to you guys as far as we're concerned. I'm certainly happy. I've worked with multiple housing authorities in multiple states. I know all the tricks they know. We can go that route, but we want you to decide with the information we're providing to staff. And this is new. It's peculiar the way that because cities aren't in the business of owning real estate.
Right.
But in this case, I think it's important that we all listen a little more to the experts, because I'm not sure yet either. But leave the door open before we go that route. That's where my head is.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have one question.
Yes,
Is
sir.
there right-of-way issues with the railroad? There have been right-of-way railroad issues before when we've looked at this project.
Sorry, the right away?
Railroad right-of-way problems.
You know, I have in Concord right now, that deal's same deal, 150 units, old mill. I actually have, I'm gonna say 20,000 square feet of one of my buildings is in the middle of the right of way. In other words, I'm totally encroaching, and you know, you can't get the railroad, you might call them for a year before you get them on the phone. But generally speaking, I've been able to underwrite over that on a dozen transactions. It's a concern, but they're so consistent in not replying that that's actually to our benefit. But a point taken.
Let me go back to Councilman Gaylor's comment when he asked about the housing authority. I actually did reach out to the director of the housing authority about this, and while he has not been contacted, or has he had any communication directly with, or indirectly for that matter, by the gentleman here or their company, I did brief him on the concept of what was being discussed, and he indicated to me that they would not be interested in being a party of that. Said it's just not their thing.
And I think that's right. Again, to me, if I'm not a city father or city leader, but if I had the ability to control without any financial risk, that's the point we're investigating. I believe, because I've been doing this a long time, that I can indemnify you guys. In other words, you can own it without risk, and they would be looking to us to pay for the risk, you know, if things didn't work out. And even if we didn't pay, if I ran to Bermuda, you still wouldn't pay. That's where I'm trying to get to, that's pretty standard in this business now. When cities issue bonds, like Concord's issuing a $22 million bond for me, they have no financial liability. They print the money, they sell it on Wall Street, that's the end of the game. Even if nobody pays, they don't pay, and they don't get an X rating. And that's kind of where all of these things go. They have, you know, workarounds. And so I just don't know enough yet to give you the definitive, go to section CFR, but I will soon.
Any other questions, comments? I know you flew here today for this, and we appreciate you taking the time and expense to come here and talk to us. This is a piece of property that's been sitting there partially vacant for years and years and years, and as you said, part of it's being used for warehousing, but if it could be transformed into housing, it would be a great asset to the city, as well as a change for the north end there. And I thank you for your time that you spent coming here and putting together a presentation, and we'll see how it goes.
We'll be back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Y'all take care.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the item D, the public comment period and public hearing policy. I wanted to put this on the agenda because, quite frankly, I haven't been consistent in maintaining the 3-minute rule during public speaking. Sometimes I get caught up in the discussion and don't hit the gavel, or if they don't sit, the individual doesn't sit down. And other times there's been requests from council members to let a person continue, and I did. But I think we need to come back to the policy that we've approved and and look at that. And there's been a suggestion there that we also have a requirement that speakers sign in prior to the meeting, and that those individuals be called upon by the clerk to come and speak. This could potentially avoid some of the consternation that comes in sometimes to public speaking. And of course, I would also ask the council's support in keeping with the 3-minute time limit. Another item that you'll see that doesn't require the council's approval necessarily, we already have a 30-minute time frame, and we have a 3-minute clock. But we've tried to add a couple features to the clock that will help the speakers, and that is a multicolored time zone, starting out with green, going to yellow when time is closing down, and then at 30 seconds it would turn red, and there would be a buzz or a little reminder that you have 30 seconds left. So I think the main issue here that I would ask council to speak to is the sign-in sheet, and ask for any comment or discussion on the time sheet. Sign-in sheet.
Sign-in sheet in terms of they have to sign in to speak or sign in before they speak, just for clarity.
Sign in before.
What we're trying to
the meeting
get to
starts.
is when they come to the meeting, they would sign in, as long as they sign in before the public comment period, and then you would have a list, and you would go down the list and saying, instead of saying, okay, who wants to speak, you'd have a list, and you just go down that list.
Mayor, there have been a number of times that I've wanted to reach out to folks that have offered public comments, and just the nature of our flow hasn't really been able to get consistent information. And so I would like that, but I want to make sure that it's administered in a way that doesn't deter anyone from speaking. So I would want it to be prior to the public comment period, not prior to the meeting. But as it's written, I don't have any issues with what's actually presented, if we can get up on the screen, but with what's actually presented. But I don't want it to have any sort of chilling effect or deterrence effect.
We'd probably leave a sign-in sheet over there at the clerk's desk.
And then anytime before the public comment period.
Correct.
Right.
I'm not looking at that policy, but I know we spent a lot of time on this, a lot of time before some of the newer council members were appointed. But we talked about when the speaker comes up here, they are to give their name and an address. So if a council member wanted to contact a speaker, then we should use that method in which we asked, which was the address. So my thing is, if that is required, and I'm not looking at it, so I don't know if somebody has it in front of them for reference, but if that's the requirement already, then it seems as if we are having a track, right, Madam Clerk? I can't see that.
Sorry.
I'll give you
I can't show.
the part in red.
No, but I'm saying, where is the part?
The only thing in
about-
red is what you want added, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Or
I'm
was
saying-
what's being proposed, anyway?
Yeah, I'm saying, where is the part that talked about the requiring of their name and their address once they get to the microphone?
I don't know.
Because that is in there somewhere, right?
I thought it was.
Was it in previous paragraph 2? Did you amend it to be more specific?
It wasn't in paragraph 2.
So item 9 on the second page. Wait, I'm sorry, that's not correct.
That's talking about addressing you.
Well, we could drop that because that information is going to be asked on the sign-in roster. We could drop the asking of the address when they come up to the podium. Because
Well, I'm saying, if we have that, what's been happening though is people have been coming to speak and they haven't been doing that part. So why don't we go back to reinforcing what was written before we try to implement something new? Because a sign-in sheet, at any given moment, somebody in a council meeting can decide to want to speak or get enough courage to want to speak. But because they didn't come in and sign a sheet, or I just got off work and I scrambled to come to the meeting and now I can't speak, I have to wait another 2 weeks possibly to even let my voice be heard because I wasn't able to sign up. And that was my same argument the last time when we talked about the sign-in sheet. I like the freedom of having it, but we put that stipulation in place to do the address and the name to keep some type of record of who was coming to speak.
I don't see the address listed in it anymore.
It was, I know what it was. It was, yes, they were supposed to give you the address, correct? No. Only me and you talked about putting the address in the minutes. So that says to me that people were giving their address. I just asked you to not put it in the minutes because it was, okay. So I don't know where, I just don't want to waste time. I don't want to not waste time, but take up more time to try to read it and find that we put in here. But I'm guessing nobody else remembers.
I believe it was in a previous policy, but I believe it was removed because I've looked through here and I don't see it anymore.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to find the older policy.
Number 3 just states that each speaker shall state their name clearly. Any speaker requesting additional information shall submit a formal records request to the clerk.
Okay, yeah.
But I think that was in that part originally. We changed it.
Does council members have a copy of the proposed change?
It was in the
It was
agenda
in the agenda
packet.
packet.
Yes. So, I'm going to read it, the proposed addition to the policy. Citizens that wish to speak during the public comment period are required to sign in before the public comment period begins and provide their name, address, email address, telephone number, and subject of the comments. The names of the citizen the name of the citizen will be the only information recorded in the minutes.
And
I have a question. How far before public comment period would the individual need to submit their information, or at what time would they need?
The idea is you can walk up and sign in any time before the public comment period starts.
Okay.
I believe Councilwoman Matthews' point is, what if I walk in 2 minutes after the public comment period starts? Why can't I speak?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, as we go down the road, as we go down the agenda, they have up until I get to the public comment period to sign in.
Or if somebody is speaking and it causes me to think of something and I want my voice to be heard, I don't have that opportunity anymore. But somebody should always have an opportunity to speak during the time that we allotted for them to speak.
Maybe you could just not make it before, but you could leave it open, but we still have a sign-in sheet, and the people who signed in first go in order, and you have that. You have 30 minutes unless, according to the guidelines, the chair or the mayor allows for more time, and I'm sure he would ask council if you want to give more time for that, depending on the subject matter.
Yes, and our policy, as we agreed on previously, established a 30-minute period of time there. So in the new clock, you'll see the 30-minute countdown above the 3-minute clock as well. So it's foreseeable that someone could walk in during someone speaking under the comment you just made, Ms. Matthews, and go over and sign up if we approve that, up until the 30-minute period had expired. After that time, they couldn't speak.
Well, how much confusion would it be for them to just sign up whenever? Let's say, what City Councilwoman Matthews said, that they're running late. So, as long as they sign up, or even if they're sitting out there, and they say, oh, I want to address this, how much confusion do you think it would cause a disruption of the meeting if that person was able to go like out there and sign up?
Well, at that time, the sign-up roster would be in the hands of the clerk, I believe. Isn't that correct?
Mhm.
So they would come up to the clerk and sign in.
What was the reason for the sign-in sheet again? That you
It
guys
makes,
are
it makes it
requesting?
easier for the clerk to track. Sometimes you don't hear the person say their information very clearly, and even when they play it back afterwards, it's hard to get. And it provides some order as to who's gonna go first. You just first come, first served on the,
So then why don't we, after the speaker goes, allow them to go to the clerk's desk after they get done, because now we talked about this before, that's why I don't know how we got back here again. But we talked about, let's say we have a sign-in sheet, we've got 15 people, we really only have time for less than that. So we have the sign-in sheet, do we carry those people on to the next meeting? Like, these are all things that we have to consider and talk about if we're trying to say this person comes in order and this, that, and the third. To me, I think we should just allow people to freely speak, but maybe us on the city side can come up with a better, because if they're supposed to state their name, there's times people come up here and because we know them, we're like, oh, we know who this is. They never say their name. They just automatically start talking. So that's not even following our own protocol. So I'm thinking that if we tighten up on our side, then maybe we don't have to go through. I just think it's putting too much stipulation on people being able to speak and talk freely like they should be able to. That's my only concern with that.
If you don't mind me saying, another reason that they were talking about this process was a lot of times when there's public comment period, council or staff members need to contact the people that are coming up to speak, but we have no contact information other than if they happen to give their address. But if we have a sign-in sheet that will list their email or their phone number, it would give council or the staff members a chance to contact them to help address their issue as well.
I understand that. I'm not knocking the sign-in sheet per se. I'm knocking the stipulation attached to the sign-in sheet.
Right.
Like, you come in order, you can't speak at this time. I'm okay with keeping a record to keep in contact with people, but the stipulation that goes on with the sign-in sheet just seems a bit much. That's all.
Well, we'll say that there are numerous cities in North Carolina that impose a sign-in roster. So this is not something that's unique.
No, I don't think it is. I'm aware our county commissioners do it.
Yes, sir.
And Mayor, is this something that will require a motion tonight? Is it? Then when we get to that point, my only recommendation would be that, in lieu of comments tonight, that we change it to sign in before speaking and provide their name, address, all that. That would just, I think that would remedy most of the concerns that have been expressed.
And we would not implement this, of course, until the 23rd of January meeting. Any other comment?
I did hear some in the way of an audible alert as well. Is that included?
Yes.
Would-
Okay.
do you wanna
I know
see?
a lot of people, they
wanna
see
s-
the colors, but then too, they may be reading when it transitions from yellow to red.
I would,
So-
Mayor Pro Tem, I would, before each public comment period, I would go over the protocol, if you will, and to speak to the clock as well.
Yes, sir.
So, do we have a motion to adopt this policy?
Mayor, I move we adopt the policy with the adjustment that citizens that wish to speak during the public comment period are required to sign in before speaking and provide their name, address, email address, telephone number, and subject in the comments. The name of the citizen would be the only information recorded in the minutes.
Second.
Motion's made and second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, at this time, our Community Relations Director will come forward, or, oh, I'm sorry, who is coming forward?
Planning Commission.
Okay. Come on up, sir. How are you tonight, Mr. Slater?
Doing well. Doing well. Good evening, Mayor and City Councilmen and women. God bless you. Wearing a different hat tonight. I'd like to say good evening. My name is Anthony Slater. I'm the chairman of the Planning Commission for the City of Goldsboro. Just wanted to start off by letting you know that I've been a part of the Planning Commission. I believe somewhere around 2018 or so, I've been back and forth with the Planning Commission. But our commission consists of 7 members whom reside in the city limits and 2 of whom reside in the city's extra territorial jurisdiction. And the members is myself, Anthony Slater as the chairman, April Rojas, the vice chair, Kevin Brown, Ronald Waters, Viola Figueroa, William Rose, and currently we have a vacancy that we're looking for someone to fill that spot. The Planning Commission's primary role, as the name implies, is to plan, and the Planning Commission is a body of citizens that serve within the local government, acting as an advisory group to the municipal governing body on issues and policies related to planning and land use regulations, and community development, of course. Planning Commission acts as citizen planners to work and to develop plans and implementation of policies and that affect how our community manages and changes in growth and development. As a body charged with comprehensive planning, and the Planning Commission may prepare, review, maintain, monitor, and periodically update and recommend it to the City Council and comprehensive plan, and such other plans as deemed appropriate, and conduct ongoing related situations and facility changes. Develop and plan policies, ordinances, development regulations, administrative procedures to carry out the plans. As an advisory body to the City Council, the Planning Commission shall review and make recommendations concerning the following: proposed official, zoning map, conventional and conditional rezonings, and unified development ordinances, changes as required by the General Statute 160D through 604. The location and character and extent of public improvements and the acquisition of land, the landscape design of parks, streets, recreation areas, public buildings, and other local developments. We do street names, street name changes, new development, proposal, and other matters as desired by the planning director as directed by the City Council. For the year 2022, the Planning Commission reviewed 28 rezoning requests and 6 special use permits. In addition, the Planning Commission reviewed 1 street name request, 1 UDO text amendment, and we heard 1 variance request as the Board of Adjustments. Planning Commission is aware of staff's plans to request to update the 2013 comprehensive land use plan in the fiscal year of 2023 to 2024 budget. The Planning Commission supports this action and looks forward in working with staff and city officials to implement all that is above. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Slater?
I'd just like to thank you for all the work you guys do.
Appreciate you.
It's a lot of work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your continued
you.
service to the city. Yes, ma'am.
Did you need our
You, go ahead.
mayor? Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good evening. I am here to share HUD's annual community assessment of CPD program performance as a result of our 2021 consolidated annual
performance and evaluation report. Okay, just a little background. Annually, HUD uses information reported in the annual CAPER to assess grantees' performance. The city received the annual assessment from HUD on Tuesday, December 20th. The city is required to make this final assessment available to the public for review. On the area of CDBG and CDBG CV eligibility and national objective requirements, HUD just reminded us that to meet the primary objective of the CDBG program, at least 70% of all annual expenditures must benefit LMI persons. The next item, the city used 100% of its CDBG expenditures and 0% of its CDBG CV expenditures to benefit low to moderate income persons. CDBG CV funds were expended. However, the funds have not been fully drawn in HUD's IDIS system. The city has expended in CDBG CV funds $101,323.81. And I'll just share here in HUD's system, the drawdown process is multiple steps. And so finance department is in the process of completing the drawdowns. And then it will show on HUD's end that we have expended that $101,000 of CV funds, CDBG CV. Lastly, the city did not exceed its 20% administrative cap or the 15% public services cap, as it used 0% for public service activities, and that just means we did not carry out last fiscal year's CDBG public services. CDBG timeliness. For CDBG, HUD regulates that grantees disperse funds timely. The timeliness rule is defined as no more than 1.5 times the most recent grant allocation in the account 60 days prior to the end of the fiscal year. In order for the city to pass the timeliness test for fiscal year 22-23, the city should spend an additional $338,390 by May 2nd, 2023. We are currently working towards that, and I'll share more of that on the last slide. CDBG CV timeliness. HUD established a 6-year period of performance on CDBG CV grants. The CV grants were received in 2020. An additional requirement imposed is that 80% of funds must be expended by the 3rd year, and we're coming up on our 3rd year this year, 2023. The city is currently under target for meeting the 80% of funds being expended. To date, we've expended 7.27% and should spend $209,462.23 by September 10th, 2023 to meet the 80% rule. And I will address that as well on the last slide. For our home program, according to HUD's PR 49 report, the city has been meeting home commitment and spending requirements. The city currently has 2 open home activities in HUD's IDIS system. And again, that goes back to that drawdown process that finance is in the process of completing for us. And then those 2 will be closed out. HUD's IDIS vacant unit report indicates that Goldsboro has no vacant units. And then with regards to CPD program monitoring, Goldsboro staff did not conduct monitoring reviews for its home assisted rental units during the 2021-22 program year. And lastly, to address the areas where we are currently working on improving with regard to this assessment, we are currently in the process of executing our CDBG spending plan per our council approved annual action plan. Next, we are establishing CDBG spending plan alternatives with HUD. At your retreat last year, we discussed in length using the CDBG CV funds for outdoor Wi-Fi, the water towers. From last year until now, the IT department and myself and our procurement manager, we've worked together closely. We put 3 bids out for the outdoor Wi-Fi, and we've received 1 bid package back, and it was a proposed budget of over $1 million. So we have not had good luck with that project. I have consulted with our HUD representative regarding CDBG-CV, and HUD acknowledges that it may be complicated to expend the rest of those funds for every grantee because we're no longer under a state of emergency with regard to COVID. So it's just going to be hard for everyone to find ways to spend that money. This has to be directly related back to coronavirus. CDBG, CV, and home funds utilized will be drawn down and closed out by the end of January 2023. So by the end of this month, again, the Finance Department will complete the drawdown process. And then lastly, the Community Relations and Development Department is currently implementing a monitoring program so that we can begin this month to monitor those home rental projects or home rental units. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions? Well, Ms. Williams, as I've said a number of times, you have a really major issue to deal with in terms of managing these funds that are given to us to make the people of Goldsboro a better place to live. And you've done it in an exemplary fashion. I know you've put in a lot of long hours managing those programs. You've just recently been able to add some staff, and that's hopefully helped the situation some. But you're also assisted by great people like Bishop Slater and his guidance and the other members that work with you. So I commend you on the work that you've done, and I thank you. I think I speak for the rest of the the council members here, expressing our gratitude to you as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I'd like to say publicly back to you, thank you so much for your continued support, and members of council online and offline. I really appreciate you all, and most definitely my day-to-day, both of my managers who provide so much support, and I just appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we're running time-wise in a good position that we can move forward and hear the consent agenda items H through J. And I'll defer to the manager for that.
You want to hear F, sir?
Sorry.
You said H through J,
Yes.
not F and G?
Well,
I think we should start with F. Municipal Ordinance Code enacting speed limit. We've got our,
my agenda said H through U. There is no U, so I started with H through J. If F and G are part of it, then we can start with F. What are we doing there?
okay. We'll check on that, but we have a subject that Bobby needs to brief you on.
Okay, all right.
Good evening.
What subject are you going to brief us on?
Sorry.
Okay.
So item F, at least what I have, consent agenda item F is the municipal ordinance to enact a speed limit change for a section of NC 581. So this section of 581 is normally called Old Smithfield Highway. If you travel west out of Ash Street at the signal where Old Cherry Hospital is, so starting there, up Old Smithfield Road to O'Berry Center Road, DOT received a request recently to change that 35-mile-an-hour speed limit to 45 miles an hour. They've done their analysis, they have concurred with it, and would like to raise that to 45 miles an hour. And this consent agenda item is for a concurring ordinance from the City of Goldsboro. So staff's recommendation is that City Council by motion adopt the attached ordinance enacting the speed limit for a section of NCDOT Highway System Street located within the existing city limits of Goldsboro. And with that, I can take any other questions.
Any questions? Okay, continue.
Thank you. Okay, the next is the 44th Annual Greater Goldsboro Road Run, temporary street closing. Chief of Police.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. And item G is the 44th Annual Greater Goldsboro Road Run, temporary street closing. An application was received from the Sunrise Kiwanis of Goldsboro requesting permission to hold their 44th Annual Greater Goldsboro Road Run on Saturday, April 22nd, 2023, from 7 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Race is scheduled to begin at Spruce Street on Center Street and end between Chestnut Street and Spruce Street on Center Street, and runs through the downtown area as Walnut Street, Evergreen Street, Andrew Street, Berry Street, Claiborne Street, Mulberry Street, and Pine Street. The police, fire, public works, and downtown Goldsboro officers have been notified of this request. The race has 3 race routes they will be using for the 10K, the 5K, and the 1 mile runs. All 3 routes will start and finish in the same area and will have staggered start times. The times requested for the closing is from 7 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. Staff recommends approval of this request subject to the following conditions. All intersections remain open for police department traffic control. A 14-foot fire lane is maintained in the center of the street to provide access for fire and emergency vehicles. All activities, changes in plans, etc. will be coordinated with the police department. The police, fire, public works, and downtown Goldsboro officers are to be involved in the logistical aspects of this event. It is recommended that the council approve the street closings of sections of Center Street, at Pine Street, Spruce Street, Chestnut Street, Walnut Street, and Mulberry Street for the 44th annual Greater Goldsboro Road Run event from 7 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. on Saturday, April 22nd, 2023. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, councilmen and women. Just going to let everybody know at last council meeting, you approved the special use permits for a billiards room at 130 South Center Street. And I'm sorry, let me back up and say that you approved the special use permit for a billiards room at 130 South Center Street, as well as a tattoo parlor at 206 East Walnut Street. There is no further deliberations on this matter. Tonight, before you have the written decision that has been provided to you for your review and approval. If you will, we'd like to ask for your approval of the written decision. Once it is approved, the mayor can sign it and the permit is valid for use. That's all.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You got the next one, Ken?
That's good.
Okay. All right, and the last one is revision of council meeting, item J. Goldsboro City Council normally meets the first and third Mondays of every month for the regular council meeting. The meeting on Monday, March 6th is recommended to be canceled due to conflict in schedules. I believe that's the ADC conference in Washington, D.C., where Mayor Pro Tem and Councilman Broadway won't be available, and I should be up there as well. Is that correct?
Any questions? If not, we'll close that session, and if there's no further business, we'll adjourn to 7 o'clock. Excuse me, we'll recess until 7 o'clock. Recess, excuse me.
Mayor, is there a closed session this evening?
Oh, you did? Okay. There is, but it's not important enough. We need